In your math journal, you're going to be taking 2 pages of notes today on dividing whole numbers, and that is TEK 5.3c. Divide whole numbers using up to 4-digit dividends and 2-digit divisors. We're going to go through a problem with a 1-digit divisor, but let's review some of the vocabulary. In a division problem, this number here that you are dividing by is called the divisor. The number that you're dividing into is called the dividend, and I like to think that the dividend is always the one under the house. And then the quotient is simply the answer that you get when you divide something. Okay, so let's look at this problem. This will be just a little bit of review. You divide, the steps for division is divide, multiply, subtract, drop down the number, and then repeat. So in this example, 7 divided into 3,465. You first start with the first numbers here. If 7 won't go into 3, then you look next door. 7 will go into 34. So we've determined that it'll go 4 times. So we put the 4 up top in the quotient, multiply 4 times 7, and that's 28. Then our next step would be to subtract the 28 from 34, and that leaves us with 6. Then we drop down our next number, the 6, and we start all over again. How many times will 7 go into 66? Well, we determine 9. So 9 times 7 is 63. Then we subtract. We have 3 left after we subtract 66 from 63. And then we keep going. We see that there's a 5 left in the ones position, so we bring our 5 down and we repeat the steps. How many times will 7 go into 35? Well, we determine it'll go exactly 5 times. So 5 times 7 is 35. We subtract that, and that leaves us with a remainder of 0. And you always want to repeat the steps till you've used all the digits through the ones place in the dividend. And that's supposed to be a D there. It didn't come out very well in the photo. But that's a D-I-V-I-D-E-N-D, dividend. Okay? But you always want to repeat the steps. As you can see, we dropped the 6 here, and then we dropped the 5 here. If you're using a bigger dividend, you just keep going, keep dropping those numbers until you get to the ones place. Now the remainder, in this case, the problem turned out to be a 0, so it worked out perfectly, but division's not always going to work out perfectly. So the remainder should always be less than the divisor. The remainder here should always be less than the divisor here. In this case, that's the 7. That's what we're calling the divisor. If your remainder is bigger than the divisor, then you need to check to see if you could have used a larger number to divide by in the quotient. If I had had a remainder of 8 or 9 here, then I probably could have raised one of these numbers, probably the 5, could have gone to 6 or something like that. So always make sure that your remainder is less than your dividend, and that's how you can assure that you did it right. Okay, and then on page 2 of your notes, we're going to look at dividing 2-digit numbers into 4-digit numbers. Okay, again, this is the dividend, this is the divisor, the dividend, and the quotient. And it's basically the same thing, and it's just a little bit bigger. We're adding another digit. So you'll look at 15 and see, can it go into, it's not going to go into the 6, it's too small. So we'll look at 63. So how many times will 53 go into 63? We determined that it'll go 4 times. So 4 times 15 is 60. And I've listed the steps over here so you can see them. So 63 minus 60 is 3. Okay, then we look next door here and we bring down our 4 and we simply repeat the steps again. How many times will 15 go into 34? We've determined it'll go twice. So 2 times 15 is 30, And then you subtract 34 from 30, and that leaves a remainder of 4. Well, we got to still keep going because we still have this 5 left in the ones position. So we bring him down and repeat the steps again. How many times will 15 go into 45? We've determined it will go 3 times. So 3 times 15 is 45. And then we subtract, and that leaves us with a 0. This one turned out nice and neat too. Okay, the hardest part of division is keeping your numbers lined up. I always talk to you guys about keeping your problems nice and neat. Keep the rows lined up, the place values lined up. That is the hardest part of division, because if you get your rows mixed up, then you're subtracting or adding the wrong thing. So always try to keep it lined up. And remember my trick, and I've turned this sideways. So remember my trick. Turn your paper to the side. Let's see if that, whoops. Turn it around. There we go. All right, remember my trick? On our notebook paper, we have lines already drawn out. So you can line it up this way to keep it nice and neat and every row lined up. And in this case, see how my divisor is less than the dividend, and there are no more digits to drop. This one wasn't nice and neat, but I did have a remainder for this one, and it was less than the divisor. So in this particular problem, I have a remainder of 15, and that's okay. Like I said, division doesn't always turn out nice and neat with a remainder of 0. Make sure you take these notes in your journal, keep them nice and neat, and remember these journals are graded as a test grade. And you can stop this video at any time to keep up with the note if you need to write the notes down and slow it down.